Greetings! On behalf of YTM, welcome aboard. Enjoy your flight.
If you love to travel and want to stay in the loop with all the latest tips, reviews, and updates, be sure to hit that subscribe button and don't forget to like and share. We do appreciate the support. Join us on our journey today as we'll be flying from Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam to JFK in New York City on KLM 787-10 Dreamliner in business class. Now, KLM's been doing this since 1919, the oldest airline still operating under its original name, and while we've tried their business class before, this will be our first go-around in their transatlantic business class. And for those of you who love the details like we do, here's a quick look at the specs for our 787-10 Dreamliner. But this trip didn't actually begin in Amsterdam. Our adventure started in Germany, where we were celebrating Lily's birthday with some friends and taking in some of Germany's famous holiday markets. We explored the Frankfurt and Erfurt Christmas markets, and we'll be sharing those experiences soon in upcoming videos, just in case you're thinking about spending some of your holiday time exploring the Christmas markets in Germany. Now let's take a look at our booking for this flight. This trip was actually part of a two-flight booking, Frankfurt to Amsterdam and then on to JFK, with a few hours in between to enjoy KLM's Royal Crown Lounge. And of course, we used points for this whole journey, thanks to a 25% transfer bonus from Chase to Air France KLM. Our tickets came out to just under 45,000 points each for both flights, plus taxes and fees, of course. That's not too bad. Now let's take a quick look at KLM's baggage allowance. For business class, you're allowed 2 pieces of hand luggage, plus a personal item, so not too bad for carry-on space. As for checked bags, unless you're flying on light fare, business class gives you 2 checked bags of up to 32 kilograms each, plenty of space for a longer trip or some shopping along the way. Now let's take a look at getting to Schiphol Airport. You have quite a few options. And the best option really depends on a few things. The time of day you're traveling, how much luggage you're carrying, your comfort level, and of course, your budget. For us, the train is the sweet spot. It's convenient, it's comfortable, it's reasonably priced, and it drops you off right inside the terminal. Alright, check-in time. Now, since we booked a connecting itinerary from Frankfurt to JFK via Amsterdam, we checked in Frankfurt using the app, which was super convenient. Now, with partner bookings, sometimes it can get a little glitchy, and you might need to check in at the airport, so just be prepared. And here we listed a few key items that you might find useful when checking in, either online or at the airport, as well as some information about bag drop-off at Schiphol Airport. And business class passengers get Sky Priority, meaning priority bag drop, dedicated lanes, and faster processing, which is always nice. And you can choose to print a boarding pass or grab it digitally via the app, whichever works out best for you. And yes, Schiphol lets you book a time slot for security. We've done it at other airports. It doesn't always work out as well as planned, but it's an option. And KLM is nice enough to provide you with this handy boarding timetable card, like they do in Air France. And since we were checking in a bag, we got a paper boarding pass as well. Now, with a few hours in between flights, which was planned, it was time to check out KLM's flagship Crown Lounge 52 at Schiphol. Modern, spacious, and thoughtfully designed with Dutch flair, of course. And I especially like those signature Delft houses throughout the lounge. Now, the lounge is divided into 3 zones: Sky, Sea, and City, each with its own distinct identity. Now, whether you're here to relax, get some work done, or just grab a bite, this lounge covered it all. They had a solid selection of food here, from hot dishes to light bites. And since I was in Amsterdam, how could I refuse an ice-cold Heineken on tap? And of course, I had to skim the foam. It was quite refreshing. And this was a great way to wrap up our wonderful lounge experience. This lounge moved up to one of our favorites. Definitely one of the best in Europe. We can't wait to return. And stay tuned for our full review of KLM's Crown Lounge 52. Now let's take a look at our boarding process for our KLM 787-10 flight. KLM's boarding process is pretty standard. For First you have pre-boarding for people with special needs and families with small children. Then Group 1, business class. That's us today. So once we got to the gate, we saw that our plane was already here, which is generally a good sign. So we checked the big board. Our flight was on time. So now it was time to board. And fortunately, business class passengers get a dedicated entrance, which does make things smoother. At least it did in this case. Okay, our boarding process did take a little while, so let's speed this up a bit. One thing I'd like to mention that I feel enhanced our KLM experience, shortly after boarding, a crew member came around to each passenger in business class, had a little conversation with them about their trip, their travels, and if they have any special needs during the flight. It was a small gesture, but a nice one. And moments like that can really help set a positive tone for the journey. And just like that, we're at our seat. Now let's take a look at KLM 787-10's business class seat. But before we settle in, let's take a quick look at the seat map. Up front, a large business class cabin with the 121 reverse herringbone configuration. Behind that, a small premium economy section arranged 2-3-2. And then you have your two larger economy cabins in the standard 3x3x3 layout. But for now, let's focus on the business class cabin, because that's why we're all here today. Now, we usually go with rows 1 or 2 to be closer to the front, or the last row to be tucked away, depending on the plane's configuration. But we had heard there's some storage limitations in rows 1 and 2. We'll show you more about that in the next section. So we went with row 3, seats D and G. It just seemed like the safer bet. Now it's worth noting the seat width isn't the most generous in the industry, but it still worked well for us. Now before we dive into the details of the seat itself, let's take a quick look at part of KLM's rather unique safety video.
The fine art of Delft Blue. Please pay attention to every detail. For your safety, make sure your carry-on luggage is stowed before.
Now let's take a look at the cabin from our seat. You'll notice the soft, muted KLM blues. I'd say it has a calming effect, not really flashy, but we liked it. Here we are in seat 3D, my home for the next, I'd say 7 hours or so. Now, let's look into the details. The seat isn't the widest in the industry, but for this flight, it was just fine. It's cloth with this thick, soft leather headrest that's fully adjustable and actually really comfy. You've got this crossbody seatbelt that detaches, so if you don't want the chest strap, you can just clip it off. We mostly use the lap belt, to be honest, it was just more comfortable. And you have this thick, wide, padded armrest. Basically, it goes down and it goes up. That's it. Simple, but solid. As far as the controls, pretty straightforward. Not a lot of bells and whistles, but the essentials are all covered. 3 seat modes, a light control, and a do not disturb, which does really help on overnight flights. And the buttons do light up in the dark, which is nice. And a button conveniently located further back in case you're in recline mode. You also have this little pocket next to your seat that houses the menu for the flight. And slightly behind you, you have this storage unit where you have your KLM complimentary headphones, as well as a hook to store them when not in use. Just above the headphones, there's a small built-in light. I'm not exactly sure what it's meant for, maybe ambiance or visibility in the dark, which are controlled by these console buttons. And now let's look at our ports. First you have an AC USB port, a headphone jack, and KLM's 3-pronged headphone connect. And these ports are located exactly where you need them, right next to you. Then we have our IFE remote, which is responsive and handy, especially in full recline mode. We have our standard reading light. As we swing around, there's a large in-flight monitor. Now, we're going to talk more about this later in the video. And below your monitor, you had this little shelf with a USB port, which was the perfect spot to charge your phone during the flight. Above that, you had your standard coat hook. And of course, the always controversial footwell. This one, pretty decent, but it does narrow a bit at the end. So if you're over, I'd say 6'3", you might need to adjust how you sleep. At average height, I really had no complaints. Now let's move on over to the tray table, which is actually kind of cool. It had this interesting geometric design. You can use it in half mode or in full size, and has these little grip dots to hold your drink. Now this tray also moves around enough that you can still get out of your seat without folding it up. I'd say a very convenient design. Up front you have your air sickness bag and typical airline magazine. And above our seats we had ample storage in the overhead compartments. But like we mentioned earlier, in rows 1 and 2, the overhead storage can be a little more compact. I thought it was worth a mention. Now above your seat you have your standard overhead lights, but what's missing are individual air vents. And since this flight was kept pretty warm, we really could have used them. And we can't forget your seat's standard safety instructions. Now, even without doors, the seat shell wraps around enough to give you decent privacy. And if you're flying solo in the center section, don't worry, it still feels pretty private. Unless the person next to you is filming a full seat review, then you might want to use the divider. Now let's take a look at the amenities for our KLM 787-10 flight. I wouldn't say they were overflowing with extras, but we had what we needed. Waiting on our seat was a pillow and a blanket. The pillow was basic, white, but comfy and big enough. The blanket was huge. Not super thick, which was perfect, because the cabin was kept pretty warm. I ended up just using it more as a seat cover to add some extra cushion. Now at one point I did ask for slippers, but that was a no-go. Not really a huge deal. Okay, next up, KLM's noise-canceling headphones. These were actually pretty good. They did cancel a decent amount of noise, and they did have a pretty good dynamic range. Remember, these headphones have a 3-prong connector that connect to the console like we showed you earlier. Next up is the amenity kit, which I found rather interesting. Let's take a closer look. It folds out like this and reads, a front row seat to the wondrous phenomenon of sunrise. The pouch opens up into this little reusable tote bag with side pockets and handles. I thought it was kinda cool. Now let's take a look inside the bag. You've got all your basics. First off, you've got toothpaste tabs and a bamboo toothbrush. Then you had a pair of socks that I'd say were okay. You had an eye mask, which I didn't use because I had my own. Earplugs. This miniature KLM signature pen, which I thought was pretty cute. And we can't forget about your lip balm and face cream. You're also provided with a complimentary spa water. Overall, the amenities were simple, sustainable, and a pleasant surprise. Now let's take a look at KLM 787-10's IFE system. This plane comes with an 18.5-inch touchscreen monitor. Now, it's not the biggest in the business, but more than enough for what I needed. This system was easy to navigate with a wide selection of entertainment choices. Now, not the largest movie selection in the industry, but plenty of options, so I had no problem finding a couple of movies for this flight. And you also get access to detailed flight information, great for the aviation geeks among us, which I'm a card-carrying member. And I always like to check out the map, because I kinda like to know where I am in the world. Moving on to the Wi-Fi on this KLM 787-10 flight. One thing that might be a turnoff is that there's no complimentary Wi-Fi in business class. You do get free messaging, but if you do need full internet access, they have a few paid pass options here. Just pick the one that works best for you. And signing into their Wi-Fi, I'd say, is pretty straightforward. Just follow the 4 steps listed here, and if you have a VPN, make sure you turn it off before you sign on, and you're good to go. Now let's take a look at our food and drink on this KLM 787-10, which is usually the best part of our flight. And remember, you could pre-order your dish up to 24 hours before departure. And once on board, we flip through the menu. We'll revisit the food options later in the video, but they had a nice selection of alcoholic beverages and a good variety. You had champagne, a couple of whites, a few reds, a nice list of alcoholic drinks, and of course the beer of choice, Heineken, and an assortment of non-alcoholic beverages, if that's your thing. And shortly after takeoff, the crew came around for our welcome drinks. We both went with the champagne, of course, and it really was quite refreshing. And to complement the champagne, they served us some local cheese and a bowl of mixed nuts. Simple, but satisfying. Next, they came by to take our dinner orders. We both started with the smoked salmon appetizer. Sadly, there was no fish option for the main course, so I went with the chicken, and Lily chose the vegetarian option. Now for dessert, I went with the sweeter option, while Lily went down the healthier road with the cheese plate. So about an hour into the flight, the tablecloth came out, and I was feeling optimistic and hungry. The salmon looked good, but it actually tasted even better than it looked, which is a pleasant surprise. The salad was crisp and fresh, and it's always a pleasant surprise when the bread is soft and served warm. I always like to have my bread with the olive oil, but you had butter as well. Now on to the main. My chicken was moist, flavorful, and surprisingly well sauced. Lily also really enjoyed her vegetarian dish, and I like the little touches that KLM provides, like this napkin ring. And the award for Best Supporting Spices goes to salt and pepper. I really do like these little envelopes. The silverware was elegant, weighty, and well designed. You really feel like you're dining, not just eating. For dessert, Lily had a cheese and fruit plate with crackers and nuts. Though I barely caught a shot of it before she dug in, she was hungry. I'm not judging. Then came my dessert. It was a true delight. Not too sweet, just the right size, and beautifully plated. Compliments to the pastry chef. And just when we were ready to throw in the napkin, they brought out these little chocolate houses. I didn't think I had room left, but let's be honest, I did. Now that we finished our first meal of the flight, I think it's time we checked out the bathrooms on this KLM 787-10. Now let's go back to the seat map and take a quick look at where the bathrooms are located. Now I came across a few different seat maps online, but this one's from the official KLM site, so hopefully it's accurate. There are 8 total bathrooms on this plane, but let's focus in on the business class, where there's 2 located up front, which I think is perfectly sufficient for 38 passengers. Now taking a closer look at the bathroom itself, it was a decent size, not the biggest, not the smallest, but definitely comfortable. Most importantly to me is that the bathroom is clean. It was also well stocked, and it was functioning. That covered all my basic needs. I especially like the touchless flush, something I wish all airplane bathrooms would adopt. There's a baby changing table, and yet again, more of those blue Delft houses lining the wall. And surprisingly enough, they had a full-length mirror in the bathroom, which is a bonus for some. And we definitely can't forget about your lotions and sprays. Let's take a look. You have your hand lotion, your no-rinse hand gel, and your hydrating face mist, which was quite refreshing. And finally, a flower, which I think adds a nice touch to your bathroom experience. As I left the bathroom, the cabin lights had been dimmed, so I guess it's time for a little rest. I reclined my seat into full bed mode and tried to find a comfortable position to sleep. Now, sleeping on a plane isn't always the easiest for me, but I tried. I laid back, closed my eyes, and managed to get just under 2 hours sleep, which, if you know me, is actually pretty good. We woke up as they were taking orders for the second meal service. I went with the chicken, while Lily went with the cheese ravioli, and for the main course, we were happy to see they had salmon. So about 90 minutes before landing, the tablecloths came out, and here's what they refer to as a light meal. It was a play on a poke bowl. It was fresh and healthy. I really liked it. I think a little more than Lily did. And a really delicious chicken side with potatoes and cauliflower. It was a tasty little side dish, and some more of that fresh, warm bread to round out my meal. Then came the dessert, a chocolate pastry that was both elegant and just the right size. Not overly sweet, but really satisfying. And we both really loved the presentation here. In case you were still hungry, they had these snack bowls at the front of the business class cabin, here and here, for a little in-between meal treat. And just before landing, we got to select our complimentary Delft Blue House, a KLM tradition, dating back to the 1950s. Each house is filled with Dutch gin and remains a fun collector's item. Now, originally, airlines weren't allowed to give passengers gifts of significant value, so KLM skirted the issue by cleverly calling this the last drink of the day instead of a gift, and this tradition is still going strong today. So our flight journey with KLM has come to a close. It's time to deplane and on to our next adventure. And now for some final thoughts. As we touched down, we decided we were generally impressed with this KLM 78710 business class flight. We boarded with pretty modest expectations, and the flight definitely exceeded them. From booking to the lounge in Amsterdam to the onboard experience, it was all better than expected. Now, it's not the ultra luxury experience of airlines like Singapore or Qatar. And yeah, there's no free Wi-Fi, no slippers, and no individual air vents. But the service was warm, the food was excellent, and the seat was surprisingly comfortable. We hope this helps you the next time you fly KLM business class. Safe travels. If you enjoy traveling and like our videos, please subscribe, share, and like. We really do appreciate it, as it does help support the channel.